Hi, welcome. My name's Lee Thurburn, and you are on livestreamlee.com. This is a daily program, 5 days a week, 3 p.m. Central Time each day that I do, and we have a conversation about business. Now, the topics change. Sometimes there's a common thread, sometimes they just change. But I think you're going to find today's topic to be particularly interesting. I'm going to be discussing how you can use value chain analysis as a way to actually create a sustainable and significant competitive advantage. We're going to talk about how a company named Fresh Direct actually did this in the online grocery industry. But before we do, I want to do a couple of things. First of all, I want to make sure that you know our different days and times. We have this conversation every day of the week. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we talk about strategy. So that's going to be our topic today. On Mondays and Wednesdays, we talk about startup activities, things that would be of particular interest and use to companies that are in the startup phase. Today, before I do that, I also want to make sure that I mention to you that if you'll visit livestreamlee.com, you'll be able to join our community. That means that you'll have access to content that is covered in these broadcasts, but you'll be able to get access to the slide decks and forms and other documents that I show and or talk about, which you might find useful in preparing your own business for more rapid growth and for success. Now, before I get started, I actually would like to take just a moment and talk about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of history. I've read lots and lots of history books. Some of my favorite people are George Washington and Winston Churchill, but I think history is really interesting. I get a lot of newsletters, and there's one in particular that I really look forward to. There's a lot that I get that I didn't ask for, but there's one that I get that I look forward to, and I did ask for it. It's from a guy named Dan Nelson that has a genealogy research business. And Dan basically does research into the past ancestry of people, and he finds some really interesting stories. There are some just real characters that a lot of people have back in their background. A recent issue of Dan's newsletter had a link to something I thought was just a real hoot. And have you ever wondered what a politician from the distant past would look like if they were running for office today? Somebody like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or something like that. Well, Dan's most recent newsletter had a link to a website that showed you those kinds of things, what Grover Cleveland or Herbert Hoover would look like today if he was running for office. So if you're a fan of history and you like that kind of stuff, go to livestreamlee.com and click on the Dan Nelson link. You can go to Dan's website, sign up for his newsletter. You can always quit it if you decide you don't like it, but I, for one, really look forward to getting Dan's newsletter. And I think if you like history, you will too. So I just wanted to share that with you. So I'm going to go ahead and launch into our conversation today. And I'm hoping that you can see this on screen pretty easily. I'm going to, I'm going to make this just a little bit larger. I'm going to actually cover the whole screen because I want you to be able to follow along with me. I'm going to talk about the grocery industry and give you some basic sort of historical background. The grocery industry in the United States is about a $630 billion a year business in total sales. The typical grocery store has a profit margin of between 3 and 4%. They depend on extremely high turnover in the products on their shelves. That profit margin of 3 to 4% allows them to generate a 15 to 20% return on investment for the investors on a typical year. Your typical grocer will have somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 packaged goods, but only around 2,200 perishable items. Now, each one of these classifications account for about 50% of the sales on an annual basis. Now, we're going to be talking today about a specific business named Fresh Direct that is an online grocer. The online grocery industry has about a 4.4% market share. Now, in fairness, this data is prior to the COVID event that we've just recently experienced, or still are experiencing. And so I suspect that more current data would show that that's risen by a significant amount, maybe 5, 6, 7%, maybe as much as double 8%. But back in 2019, when these data points were gathered, the online grocery industry in total accounted for 4.4% of the market. Now, we're going to be talking in specific detail about a company named Fresh Direct. Fresh Direct, in comparison to your typical grocer who has 25,000 packaged items, Fresh Direct only offers about 3,000 packaged items to their clientele. They do, however, have 5,000 perishable items, which is more than double the amount of perishable items that a traditional or typical grocer will have. The packaged items represent about 25% of Fresh Direct's total sales, and the perishable items about 75%. Your typical Fresh Direct customer will buy most of their packaged goods through a store like Costco or Sam's Club, and then they'll buy the majority of their perishable items directly from Fresh Direct. Now, Fresh Direct is targeting and expecting to achieve a profit margin of about 10%, which is more than twice, 2.5 to 3 times what the typical grocer will be able to achieve, which means that Fresh Direct, when they're firing on all cylinders, should be able to return between a 30 and 40% return on investment to the investors. Now, that's an extremely lucrative market. And anytime there's a highly lucrative market, you can expect significant competition and competitive interest in the market. So, Fresh Direct, let's talk a little bit about Fresh Direct in particular so that you can get a sense of what they have accomplished. Fresh Direct was started in 2001. They turned their first year of profitability in 2005. Their original investment to get their business up and running was about $100 million of equity funding. It took them a little over $60 million to achieve getting their business from startup to initial positive cash flow in 2005. Now, Fresh Direct is located in the Bronx, and Manhattan and the surrounding boroughs with about a 10-mile radius are home to over 4 million people. So they have a highly dense, very localized population, which of course, as you would imagine, is an important, a very important sort of strategic piece of information to support an online-only grocer. In 2012, they opened an 800,000 square foot facility. Again, that was in the Bronx. And they actually received $130 million of development funds from the state of New York. But that 800,000 square foot processing plant is an important thing in their goal to achieve higher quality and lower prices. They have, without a doubt, the cleanest grocery facility in the entire Manhattan area. And their facility has 7 different temperature-controlled zones, which are ideally kept at the ideal temperature for both maximum freshness and ripening of the foods that they bring in. Now, they bring in foods as much as possible from the local surrounding communities. farms and fisheries and so on. And so they do a really good job of getting fresh produce in, keeping it in a perfectly controlled facility close to their customers that they can then ship out to. In 2019, they received a $189 million capital investment through JP Morgan, with the goal of that investment being to help them expand outside of the northeastern major city sort of corridor. Currently, they're operating primarily in Manhattan, New York City, the Manhattan area, and then in Philadelphia. They do have plans to expand, but they're going to have some challenges when they do that. So this gives you kind of a basic overview of the industry and the specifics of what Fresh Direct has accomplished. Now, there's a few issues that Fresh Direct has that have to also be considered. First, there are some sustainability issues that Fresh Direct needs to get a handle on. They have tremendous packaging waste because they operate on basically a conveyor line assembly process for processing the orders that their customers place through the online website. They have an extremely intense or large amount of packaging, plastic wrapping and paper goods and boxing and insulation and that sort of stuff. They use a lot of packaging. And of course, today, that is something that a lot of people are concerned about, both the recyclability and the landfill impact that packaging has. So that's a major issue that Fresh Direct is having to deal with. Another major issue is how they deliver the goods to the consumers. So in Manhattan and the boroughs surrounding, a lot of people don't have cars. So the online grocery industry is dependent upon delivery to the consumer. Now, the consumer will often walk to a neighborhood grocer, but of course, those neighborhood grocers have high prices for rent, and the consumer can only really transport what they can easily carry or cart back to their home. And so Fresh Direct delivers. Now, when Fresh Direct delivers, there's a couple of ramifications to that. One is they create a lot of pollution, and number two is they create a lot of traffic congestion. Traffic congestion is a byproduct of the fact that they park their trucks in the street so that they can deliver to the doorsteps or into the buildings of their customers. And those trucks that are idling in the street generate, of course, emissions as well as cause traffic congestion. So Fresh Direct has a number of sustainability issues that they have to deal with their business model that traditional groceries do not have to deal with. To give you a brief understanding and picture of what their competitor situation looks like, first of all, let me say that because they have potentially such high margins, the online grocery industry is an extremely attractive industry to major competitors. Of course, you know, Amazon purchased Whole Foods in part to get into the grocery business and in part to provide an access point, a physical access point into communities to be able to deliver and accept returns of packages that Amazon sends out. But Amazon also is in the online grocery industry with their Amazon Fresh grocery product. Walmart, of course, is also a grocer, and Walmart has purchased and has launched an online grocer called Jet. And then you have a couple of regional grocers called Peapod and Your Grocer. Now, because Manhattan represents and the boroughs represent such a highly dense, concentrated population, they attract a lot of online competitors. But you also have competition from pretty much everybody else that is in the grocery business. Now, because Fresh Direct focuses their attention on an extremely large selection of fresh produce and meats types of products, fresh from the farm, fresh from the ranch, fresh from the fishery. They actually compete with some of your premium grocers like Trader Joe's and Whole Foods, and there's others. But they also compete with every other grocery in the industry. And every other grocery in the industry, as you're probably very well aware, has developed pickup as well as home delivery options for either a nominal or no additional cost to compete, especially as a result of the COVID situation that we've experienced since this data that I'm providing to you was developed. So before I launch into the discussion on the value chain adjustments, I wanted to give you a little bit of industry background. Now, Fresh Direct is a great example of a business that was basically disintermediating the market. And they had a new idea. And I don't know about you as an entrepreneur, you probably come up with new ideas pretty regularly. I do. And I'm not only come up with new ideas, but I also have people approach me with ideas that sometimes I find pretty interesting. And one of the things that I have found as an entrepreneur that are important to me is to have really good caliber people that I can bounce these ideas off of, the ones I come up with and the ones that are presented to me, to be able to make sure that I'm thinking of all the things I should think about. You know, one of the biggest challenges that we have as entrepreneurs is a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. And you can call that Murphy's Law, you can call it what you will, but that's one of the biggest challenges we have to confront, is not knowing what we don't know. Well, when I have a situation, I reach out to a friend of mine that is an attorney named Scott Reeve. And I want to just tell you that if you don't have a good entrepreneurially oriented attorney as part of your team, you might want to consider getting in touch with Scott. If you go to livestreamlee.com, you're going to find a link there that says Scott Reeve, Reeve Law. And if you click on it, you'll be able to get in, you learn more about Scott and get in touch, reach out to Scott. When you come up with new ideas, when you try innovative things, you probably should run these ideas by somebody that you can trust. And accountants and risk management people and attorneys are part of the crew that you should have working with you. So if you don't have a really good attorney, consider reaching out to Scott. Go to livestreamlee.com to get his information. So here is what a realistic grocery value chain would look like. Now, the word factory would actually have the word farm inserted in here, but a value chain is a sequence of products going from the raw material stage to the finished goods stage. Wherever your business is in the production process for an actual ultimate finished good, you have suppliers that provide you with inputs, and you have customers. Now, your customers might be manufacturing companies or retailers or wholesalers. You might have a whole variety of different types of customers, but it doesn't really matter. The value chain may include your company, or it may you might be the retailer towards the end of the line. But a value chain will typically have a relatively large number of sequential steps in the assembly and delivery process. And at each one of those steps, a company is going to provide a service or provide a product to the aggregated value of what you're going to sell. And that margin, that value add at each step of the value chain is ultimately what ends up determining the price that the end customer has to pay. So taking this concept and applying it to the grocery industry, I've actually done some research for a specific product, organic broccoli, everybody's favorite. I know, I love it. If you're not a broccoli fan, sorry. It is a good example for the value chain equation. Now, these numbers may not be exactly what the current market basically would charge for each of these steps, but when you do value chain analysis, you look at every product and you track it all the way from, in this case, the grower, all the way through to the end customer. And every person, every company that touches that product prior to the end customer getting it will add some sort of markup as a result of the service they provide. So you start with a broccoli farm. Now, if you buy broccoli direct from the grower in sufficiently large volume, your cost per pound is probably going to be about 50 cents a pound. Now, that grower is going to ship the broccoli. And first of all, I'm talking about a traditional value chain for a traditional grocer here. That farmer is going to ship it to a collection point. Very often it's a co-op, a farmer's co-op. Now, there's a cost to ship the broccoli, and then the farmer's co-op has a cost for their aggregation facility. And their aggregation facility does a big value because adds a real value because they accumulate or aggregate broccoli from all the different growers in a region, and then they prepare it for or make it available for shipment to a wholesaler in a city or to a variety of different wholesalers who then distribute within cities. So the farmers co-op will ship it to typically a citywide distributor, who will then in turn ship it directly to the grocery store where the customer will come and buy the broccoli. Now, the grocery store will have marketing costs to be able to get the customer to come to them to buy broccoli, and of course all the other things that customers buy. They may not focus their marketing specifically on broccoli, but they focus marketing on getting customers to come in. And then the customer will come and get it, and after the sale, there will be a need for service. Okay, now the service might be the grocery employees that help you find the products that you need. There's a variety of different ways to look at it, but marketing and service are part of the primary value chain for all businesses. Now, when you look at the sequential steps, the broccoli might cost 50 cents from the farmer in bulk on a per pound basis. And you probably have about 15 cents per pound to ship it to the farmer's co-op, another 15 cents added by the co-op, another 25 cents to ship it to the city distributor, and another 25 cents per pound added by the distributor, who then ships it for another cost of about 25 cents a pound to the grocer. So by the time the broccoli has arrived at the grocer, the cost per pound is about $1.55. Now, most grocers are going to take that per unit cost and about double it. And the current price in North Texas for a pound of organic broccoli is running about $2.99. Well, that basically means that the grocer is adding a total of about $1.44 of margin to that product to cover all of their overhead and marketing and other costs and as well as their profit. So that's their margin to contribute to potential profit. So we're really only concerned with margin because that's all we can really focus attention on here. So next, let's look at what Fresh Direct has done. So Fresh Direct has taken several steps out of the value chain because Fresh Direct gets their product directly from the grower, from the farmer, and it's shipped directly to the Fresh Direct processing plant in the Bronx. Now, to be able to get the premium product, Fresh Direct probably pays a little bit more per pound than a traditional grower does because Fresh Direct wants the best of the best produce. So they probably pay a little more, 60 cents a pound instead of 50 cents. And because the grower is shipping all the way to the city, the transportation cost to get that in is going to be a little bit more, probably 25 cents per pound. So when you look at it, there's also one other cost, and that is Fresh Direct picks up the distribution cost to the customer, whereas a traditional grocer is going to have the customer drive directly to the grocery store. Fresh Direct is responsible for shipping to the customer. So whereas on the prior screen, let me just go back and show you that the shipping cost to the customer side was at zero. With Fresh Direct, we've added 25 cents per pound to get the produce into the hands of the customer. So 60 cents plus 25 cents plus 25 cents is $1.10. So the Fresh Direct cost, instead of it being $1.55, is $1.10. Now, Fresh Direct is going to compete to try to get more business and use the efficiency, because online grocery is all about efficiency and higher quality. So how do you do that? Well, you attract customers to the online experience by giving them a little better bargain. So Fresh Direct will probably sell that for $2.79 instead of $2.99. But even though they're charging less, because their costs are less, they have a larger margin. They have a margin of $1.69. Well, what does this actually translate into? Well, before I get to that, let me first just recap the changes that have occurred here. Fresh Direct has eliminated the steps of wholesaler congregation, distribution from the wholesaler to the grocery warehousing, and distribution from the grocery warehousing, and something that hasn't really been mentioned in the value chain but has an impact, and that is grocers, especially in Manhattan, but this is true everywhere. Grocers have to have pretty prime real estate. That means they pay a real high dollar for the space that they rent. The benefit, one of the beautiful things about online grocery management, is you can put your online grocery in a warehousing district where you get much lower costs for your land, much lower costs for your building, and of course have easy access to the transportation network. Because you're lowering your facilities costs, now you're offsetting this by having extremely automated processing plants that are very custom designed, but you're lowering your building costs and your rent costs, which are big fixed costs that have to be factored into overhead. So what are the steps that are being added? The one step that's being added is the distribution to the consumer. So these are the changes that Fresh Direct made in the online grocery industry. When you compare, they didn't make the changes in the online grocery industry, they made the changes in the grocery industry. Now, other grocers could do effectively the same thing, but your typical grocery store that tries to compete with Fresh Direct doesn't have the benefit of having the lower rents and the dedicated facilities. So they can't lower their costs. All they can do is increase their volume and try to spread their overhead over increased volume. So if we look at the impact, and I want to first consider the impact without spoilage or shrinkage being considered. When you look at your traditional grocer, they sell the product for $2.99 and they have a margin of $1.44. That's got to cover their overhead and their profit. When you look at Fresh Direct, they have a retail price 20 cents lower of $2.79, and their margin is $1.69. Their margin has improved by 17%. Now, the consumer gets the benefit of a 20 cents per pound savings, which is a 70% lower price. They get greater convenience because they order online, the food is delivered to them, and they get fresher produce because everything that Fresh Direct has done to manage the process results in having a higher quality, a higher quantity of selection, and a fresher product delivered sooner from the farm, sooner to the customer because of the incredible efficiency they've built. But I said without spoilage. This is the margin difference in the savings without spoilage considered. When you consider spoilage, and let's just add 50 cents a pound in spoilage, because in a traditional grocery, between all the different freight, from the time that the produce leaves the farm to the time it gets sold, there's spoilage and there's waste, there's shrinkage, there's all kinds of things that happen. Let's factor in an additional 50 cents of cost on each side. Well, what happens then is your margins change. Your margin goes down For the traditional grocer, from $1.44 to 94 cents per pound. For Fresh Direct, it goes down from $1.69 to $1.19. But when you consider now the margin differential by taking that 50 cents a pound out, Fresh Direct is actually getting a 27% greater margin than the traditional grocer. So what does all this mean? Well, what all this means is that the solution of building a network and a delivery process, of changing the value chain structure to strip out these 4 or 5 different steps that they've stripped out, has given Fresh Direct and any online grocer a tremendous competitive advantage versus a traditional grocery. Now, this works best in a highly dense metropolitan area, but if you look at the kinds of mass transportation changes that are occurring in many cities, like, say, Dallas, which we're all very familiar with, they have the rail lines spoking out from the city, and along those rail lines, they have extremely dense urban clusters forming up. These represent ideal opportunities for companies like Fresh Direct. So I thought this would be an interesting exercise for you to be able to see how value chain analysis can help a company be more competitive and can build a significant and sustainable competitive advantage, which of course is the whole purpose of anything that you do in the world of business to your business. And so value chain analysis can be a powerful tool in that respect. Now, we've run out of time, but before I close, I want to take just a moment, and I want to tell you about a guy that I'd like to hopefully you'll get to know. I talked earlier about the importance of what you don't know and having people around you that know things that you don't know. Well, risk management for your business is one of those important things. It's actually amazing to me how many different things can go wrong in business. I've been around for a while and I've seen a lot of stuff, but I'm not in the risk management business. And so I actually depend on people like Carlos, Carlos, to help risk manage my business. My business is my single biggest asset. And there are an incredible number of things that can threaten your business. Have you ever been sued? Well, that's something that insurance can help you with. And I promise you, if as you become more successful, you become a bigger target for any and all kinds of threats against the wealth that your business is creating. And that's where people like Carlos, risk management experts, come into play. If you go to livestreamlee.com and you click on the Carlos Can To button, you can reach out directly to Carlos and have a conversation with him about your business and make sure that your risks are well managed. I want to thank you for spending time with me today. Tomorrow we have a great interview scheduled with a lady named Chandra Branch Neal. And Chandra has a bookkeeping and tax business that she's built. It's quite successful. And I am looking forward to asking Chandra about the challenges that she encountered and how she overcame them and grew her business and how she helps her clients grow their businesses. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you back here at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Bye.